So, welcome. My name is Bertram Dorn. I'm specialized solutions architect for security and compliance with Amazon Web Services in Europe, Middle East, Africa. Don't worry, I'm practicing this in the morning. Yeah, absolutely. I need to have enough breathe, enough air to use to speak out my own job title. So, fun today. I'm not the security team. I'm not the compliance team. The guys from the compliance team are afterwards. So if you have Gerald Boyne and Christian Hesse later, they are part of the AWS compliance team. I'm not. I'm also not the security team. My function is customer bridging, customer facing, helping customers to map their requirements to AWS, or in many cases, explain customers what and how we do. For those who have seen summits or YouTube stuff, well, my son says YouTube. Well, he's 4 years. He's okay. He is allowed to do that. So some of you might have already seen me. Today, I will not concentrate any longer for today on regions, availability zones, things like that. We had some talks about this, and I expect you to know about it. If not, there are some really nice trainings. It's, for example, the AWS Business Professional and the AWS Technical Professional training. We'll cover that. I'm concentrating about, well, where to look for and which service can help you to mitigate cyber risks. So basically, you'll see a little bit of in Germany we would say potpourri, or a bunch of nice services, which we typically discuss in my role, and how to combine that. So, hey, it's working. Nice. Black, white, okay. So, AWS. If you interact with AWS, that does mean you want to interact with the cloud or utility computing. So far, so good. We can start with basics. So, what we do, we guard our systems with the ring. We call the ring the cloud service provider controls. And those are ours. And we have our services inside this ring. We have many customers who want to know what we do there and how we do this, and, well, typical question, which hypervisor do we use? Amazon Xen. Things like that. How do we maintain the Amazon Xen hypervisor? Well, however we maintain it. And also, a very interesting question, do we, for example, harden all the systems underneath there accordingly to industry standards and especially to the requirements called out by the vendor? Absolutely, we are the vendor. So, fine. That does mean we have something around our systems, and you can communicate with that. First of all, if you want to know that we do things inside there, we have our compliance system to give you information out of that. And if you want to interact with those services, there's an outside ring. The outside ring, I call that quickly, hello? Oops, there's one step missing, or it's white. It's called the outside ring. That's the API, the Applicational Programmable Interface. So even if you use the command line interface or the drop-click interface called AWS Console, basically, those are systems carving API calls for you. And each API call is individually signed. And this is how customers interact with AWS in general. There's not, I'm pretty sure there's, besides ProServe and training, nothing where you can't work without an API call. Which is good, because API calls are machine readable, and API calls can be logged. API calls make it transparent. API calls cannot be misunderstood. There's no noise on the line where you say, hey, Bertrand, can you please switch off, switch, and I switch off the wrong one. API calls does mean, well, you explain what it is. If the API call is invalid, happened, we send you an error. So that's pretty good. And it's very important to understand that the interaction with us is over the API calls, and what we do inside there is our business. So, we can look at this a little bit more detailed. if we look at the API, what do we need to do if we have a resource or a user who wants to talk to an application? And by the way, why is this something with cyber risk? Because cyber risk does mean, well, where are your risks? Where is the path which we need to protect? Where are the risks buried, and what can you do here? So first of all, to find out about risks, you need to know the paths, and this is what we do here. So you have a user and an application, and what you need to do. First of all, you need to talk to the API. Pretty easy. No API, no activity. I pretty much shock our salespeople from time to time if I tell the customer, well, we don't do anything for you. You do all the things yourself. Or in the beginning of the session, we have heard someone, well, you own it. You build it, you own it. This is great. This puts back responsibility to the customer. This gives the customer of AWS the possibility to gain more control about it. It's totally different to outsourcing. And that's fun, because you get transparency back. Transparency enables you to fulfill your compliance requirements, to fulfill your regulatory compliance, and to fulfill, well, mitigation of cyber risks. So who's carving API calls? Not AWS. Well, maybe some systems carve API calls, but in this case, you authorized us to carve API calls. Basically, you need a guy. We give this person a tool set, for example, a web interface, command line interface, APIs, SDKs. And come on, this person, typically there's a line there called architect, called SA, architect, administrator, you name it. Important is, you see there are two entities. It's the green one, who is using an application sooner or later, and there's the guy with the tie. Well, most of us don't wear any ties anymore, but okay. Shows that there's an architect, and he's not the application user. For those who interact with us, it's sometimes pretty interesting. If AWS is using the word, well, AWS user, we don't mean the green guy. We mean the tie guy. Yeah? And if you run into CIO or data processing officer meetings and we talk about AWS users, they get scared because they think, well, the AWS users are the users in the field, or the users of the application, or the email users, or the Word document users. No, it's not. AWS users are administrators, and there we can carve that out, that there's a different path. So basically, we give an encrypted and AWS version 4 signed path to our endpoints for this administrator, and from here on, the administrator, through the API, is communicating with our command plane. Dramatically simplified. Dramatically. But okay. So, whatever happens here, it's going into AIM. AIM makes up its mind, and the result for the majority of the API calls is going into CloudTrail. Great. So that does mean with this mechanism, you can carve a lot of API calls and build up your application. In this case, I have a sort of serverless application in mind, and I use specific services of AWS. And from a little bit mathematical standpoint, you create a surface. You see, it's again the ring, the double ring. You created a surface, and your application is basically calling each other on the surface of this ring. And very important, now I'm the first one leaving the stage, you have two paths. You have the data path, which is fully under your control, and you have the command path. And the command path is something which we define. You can't modify the command path because we define the APIs. Actually, last counting of last year, we have approximately 45,000 API calls possible. And Yes, this is countable from a mathematics standpoint. It's countable. It's an ended group, an ended set. Yes, it's fully explainable. It's a nice, big, beautiful state engine made by lots of 2 pizza teams. And yeah, you see the 2 paths. So I want to give you some hints. What can you do to mitigate your cyber risks on those 2 paths? Because you need to treat them individually. Each path has different risks. Come on. So that's not working here, however. I need to go back to the small stage. Yeah. So, also, we always need to talk about the responsibilities. You see the same thing in the paths. This is your application. We have a line. Keep in mind the line is individual for each customer. Is individual for each service, of course, unique over all customers. Each service has its own line, therefore I don't use things like hypervisors or infrastructure. I use it a little bit more abstract. Above the line, this is something the customer does. We call it off the cloud, in the cloud. This is an old picture, but keep in mind, those are, again, the cloud service provider controls. Now, if we talk about risks, if we talk about cyber risks, who is responsible to mitigate the risks underneath the line? Talk to our security and compliance team. They are responsible. Or AWS Web Services Incorporated, Seattle, Washington, is responsible to mitigate the cyber risks below the line. We are certified that we do that. For example, payment card industry, which tells you pretty detailed what we minimum have to do. So you can make up your mind, is this enough, is this not enough? But it's something we do, and we mitigate the cyber risks here. Above the line, you have cross-service controls, like who's calling whom. You have service-specific controls, which are pretty important. Especially if we look back in the last year, what have we seen in the press? We have seen, for example, people having open Elasticsearch clusters. We're sorry. What shall we do? Someone decided to make them open. They don't need to ask us. That's a feature of this Elasticsearch cluster. If you offer a public data set, well, maybe you want to do that. Or S3. Well, some one of you might have seen me playing piano. I have all this music on S3. I'm really happy if everyone on the world is accessing this music and listens to it. Makes me good. Fine. So the bucket is open. I don't mind. It's okay. I have a data processing addendum with AWS because whenever you pull something, I see that in the log file. So I see person-related information. Keep in mind, IP addresses plus timestamp might or might not person-related, so you need to make up your mind. I made my risk assessment. I have a DPA. So, and you need to take care of optimization controls upstairs. For example, in EC2, it's virus scanning, patching, all this kind of stuff. And you see that there are things which both need to do. Very typical example is virus scanning. If you run an EC2 instance, it's your business to scan for viruses there. We don't. It's not part of the service description EC2. On the other side, of course, we do virus scanning on our side of the shared responsibility underneath that to protect our systems, but only for our scope. So we need to work together, and we need to combine that. And the nice thing is we communicate what we do and how we do this over our service provider control set, which is giving you insights. Feel free to go deeper. In this case, you'll talk to me. And if you have more reasons, you talk to the guys after me. And then we'll see. In the majority of cases, we are able to answer all the questions with the service provider control set. If not, we're happy to extend that if necessary. So, and again, keep in mind, it's the API. By the way, the slides will be public. They are already public. If you have seen me on YouTube, I'm using them a lot. But we even after 4.5 years, already now, well, 4 years and some 26 days. It's important to repeat this all the time. It's interesting that even me, I learn all month, all week, new things about shared responsibility. It might be a term which we use too often, but from a security standpoint, it can't be too often, because you need to separate those paths. And let us look into the paths. Again, cloud, good. Now let's make this very, very transparent. There's a data path from the left side. And on the other side, there's a command path. By the way, this slide is new for those who want to make pictures. You can be first on the network. So, data path and the command path. And we have the cloud service provider controls to protect this. Great, our job. This is a report of Ernst & Young, so-called SOC 3 report. Now, for the people with cameras, better to see. Important is this, the paragraph here. First one. The real great thing is that Ernst & Young gives us an attestation through the SOC 3 that, based on their opinion after having audited us for a half year, they come to the conclusion that through this half year, from October 1st, 2016 to March 31st, 2017, the Amazon Web Service system was protected against unauthorized access, use, or modification to meet AWS commitments and system requirements. It's a very nice sentence. I really love it. Because we are protected against unauthorized access here, in this path. Not on this side, on this side. And what does it mean? What's unauthorized? So basically, no AWS employee is pre-authorized to access customer data. It's very important. This authorization is not existing by default. No one, zero. We give you contractual language that we only access customer data if it's needed to provide our services. That's important, because if you send us an S3 object, for example, my music, I want Amazon Web Service Incorporated, Seattle, Washington, to read this from the network, distribute it in the corresponding regions, region, not regions, one region, read through the objects, repair the objects if necessary, and if you send a GET request to this music, I want them to send that to you. I'm not doing that. They do that. I did authorize AWS to do that for me. And they are protected against unauthorized access, so there's nothing happen besides the authorization I gave them. By the way, I gave them every authorization they need to provide the services I consume. It's a very scalable thing. But it gives you a good view, because you can make up your mind, service by service, what risk is there from an AWS side. And we can prove through Ernst & Young that we protect our path. The AWS command path is protected against cyber risk, so cross it off. Great. And on the other side, I changed that from data path, because sometimes data path and command path is very similar, DynamoDB, S3. But let us call this the application path, and the application path is something, again, managed by the customer. And here I want to look a little bit more deeper inside. But first of all, let us have a look on the command path, because I recently inserted this slide here because I get the question, Mr. Dorn, you're the specialist here in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa. What is my main risk? It's losing your access keys. If you lose your access keys, you're doomed. So identity and access management is your main risk on AWS. You need to get this right. And there is plenty of best practices out there. I don't need to go in details with nice JSON files you can't read in the backend. But this you can read, right? Yeah, good. IAM, main risk. Get it done. To help you, we have services like CloudTrail, Config, and Amazon Elasticsearch. Why Elasticsearch? It's not a security service. Because CloudTrail is a bunch of data, and I can read CloudTrail, but I can't read CloudTrail as fast as even on my private account things go through. So you need to do analytics on that. And we have one tool called Macy's, which we roll out. It's now available in US East, which help you analytics on CloudTrail. And you can feed the CloudTrail data into Elasticsearch and use the Kibana on top of that. That's a really great thing. If you want to go deeper in that, there's a talk from me about that called Sensors on AWS, where I demonstrate on YouTube how to do that. And you can create dashboards, data protection dashboards. Ask yourself, well, I want to have my data in Frankfurt. A question of the data protection officer. Well, prove to me for the last half year that you did not use Sydney. That's fun, because maybe you today don't use Sydney, so you let him sit down at the console and he's clicking it through and goes to Sydney and think, well, nothing there. I need to go click through 110 services, but it's nothing there. Fine. But this is not a proof that there hasn't been something a month before. With CloudTrail and recording and display over Elasticsearch, you can do this like that. If you have the dashboard ready, I recently did this with beginners on AWS. Took us 2 hours. For those who can do Lambda functions quickly, takes you maybe 30 minutes. And 25 of those minutes you try to figure out how Kibana works. Yeah. So that's an easy one, therefore I put Elasticsearch into the picture. And you see, maybe you have seen the simple icons thing. It's a nice set of icons which we produce for, I think, Visio and PowerPoint and some others. They are grouped. So the green ones are theoretically identity access management and security services, but sometimes I put in yellow ones because they are part of the picture. And that's the important point. Well, also you need to put CloudWatch into that. In especially another thing, you can train CloudWatch logs for CloudTrail. We can trust it, CloudWatch logs for CloudTrail. It's a good feature to enable all that and to give you alarming. Of course, behind CloudWatch, we have SNS and SQS, helps you to deliver stuff, but the sensors there. And last but not least, don't forget the flow logs. Flow logs for EC2 give you insights about your risks. Are you scanned? Are you not scanned? Do you have internal packets in the VPC which are denied? There are exactly 2 possibilities for denied packets inside your VPC. It's so easy. Possibility A, misconfiguration. Possibility B, attack. Both things needs to be addressed, right? Why should I have a misconfiguration? Just get it done. Ask them why. So that's an important part, and we have some other things. For example, we have the KMS system, which is connected or which is used by others. That is an area which is necessary to be understood. Watch out, I will have a new talk out there in English and in German on how KMS gets integrated into our services, how to understand what's a data key, what's a customer master key, what's a host backing key, things like that. Those are areas you need to understand to make up your risk on the command path. And last but not least, there's organizations. Why organizations so late? Because organizations is a very early product. Maybe it's really good and it's meant for creating API, accounts on an API base. The SCPs, the policies you find in organizations are nice to have, but they're not meant there today for managing things in detail. Just don't try it. Headache, bad sleep, unhappy administrators. makes unhappy users. So SCPs are good for switching on and off APIs, but nothing else. So this is a little summary, very placative command path. Let us look in the data path, and this is the more fun slide today. So we have the entry point. And if we look at the data path from a security standpoint, please consider those services. Because if you use those services, we take care of washing the traffic. If you use one of those services, behind the service, there's only fully negotiated TCP connections with valid HTTP traffic. Invalid HTTP traffic, drop. Port scans, drop. DDoS attacks, well, we get larger. You don't realize that, hopefully. In many cases, you don't. SYN floods, well, drop. So everything behind that is washed, is shield protected. With Shield Advanced, we even help you to configure the web application server. WAF rules are pain. You need a little PhD to do them. And especially you need a PhD in WAF rules and another PhD for understanding the application. Yeah. So basically a good WAF is an inverse setup of your application. The WAF should deny everything which is not used by your application. So what's not used by application? Try to find this out. It's fun. Or it pays my bill. I'm not consulting anymore. So, but here we have people who protect Amazon since decades. They are able to help you if you opt into Shield Advanced. Looks expensive, make up your mind. Get in contact with us to find out what it is. Basically, after Shield, things are protected. You also can pull in the certificate manager to protect your private key and public keys for TLS. And then you talk to the app gateway. The app gateway is a protocol break, an information break between your public-facing side and your internal side. And API gateway basically talks to Lambda. Or, well, typically I have a hard time with SAs if they say Lambda is doing this for you. What is Lambda doing? It's launching code you wrote. So Lambda is launching code. So basically, I should have taken the Lambda function item here, but it's not that 3D, so I opted for that. So your Lambda function is doing the work behind the app gateway, and then the Lambda function can call your application, which is then somewhere, for example, in your VPC. And you can see that you have a path into the VPC through the Lambda function, through the app gateway. So the app gateway is triggering the Lambda function and is transporting data from the app gateway into the Lambda function, and the Lambda function shows up in your VPC. So you could run without an internet gateway. Well, I have it there because sometimes you need it. But you see where your risk vectors are and where your risk surface is. And again, the risk surface for those services on the left side, this is basically AWS. Because from a shared responsibility standpoint, that's up high the stack. No virus running on your side. Not for the service, maybe for the data. Or no DDoS stuff. And then we have inside the VPC, we have services which can help you. For example, Cloud HSM is a service inside the VPC doing crypto operations for you pretty quickly. We have the EC2 System Manager. This is a premiere. I never used this word publicly. It's first time. Because there's another service, it's Inspector. So both of them are agents which run on your instances. And I wouldn't say on your instance, in especially Inspector is a kernel module. For those who know where I'm coming from, I have programmed kernel modules. They're pretty powerful. Well, let me say they're God. So if the kernel module wants something, well, we can do it. But in the end, It's an AWS service which is going into certification, where we give you exactly knowledge what it is doing, and it helps you to minimize your risks, to find your cyber risks, automatically, programmatically. They are linked with all our services. They are programmatically. Keep in mind, the first picture with the 2 rings, all those services are API driven. You can launch Inspector through the API, and the API is giving back what the finding has been. You can act on that, so you can automate it. Automation is key. And for those who think there is something missing, yes, data path, and on the other side there's another path coming from the other side, all the custom gateways. The custom gateways are basically VPN connections, direct connect, or peering. Now we have a picture of services which you should consider to find out where are your risks. What risks do they mitigate? For example, Inspector mitigates risks of unpatched systems, gives you a warning. Well, not mitigating, it's giving you a warning so that you can act on that. But you could say, okay, if Inspector gives you a warning, you disable the EC2 system for that. So you can do something. It's all about information. Those systems give you information. The left side, the left arrow, this arrow is giving you pre-washed, clean, nice traffic. Web application filter, for example, has 2 buttons. One for mitigating SQL injection attacks, and the other one for mitigating cross-site scripting. Again, if you ask us how, well, I come with, well, we are certified. Because if I tell you how we do this, you would know another attack vector against it, potentially, because we don't know what we don't know. But if we don't tell you what we don't know, you don't also know what we don't know. Yes, I'm right. I made it. Yeah. So, pre-wash traffic, you reduce the surface. You reduce the surface to have remaining risk in your application, in your code. This is something where we can't, as of today, do something. Maybe sooner or later with machine learning, I don't know. But the remaining risk here is the code inside the Lambda functions and the libraries which you pull there. Input validation, all this kind of stuff. But you don't need the little bit overweighted, formerly long-hair guy who is setting up your systems and tells you everything is secure because no one's looking at the risk path. Yeah. So, reduce surface, concentrate on your code, and to close the loop, take ownership of that, because that's your intellectual property. That's your core business, to know about those business processes which you put in the code. Doing WAF is maybe the core business of AWS or Palo Alto or F5. If you're in this business, well, talk to us. If not, use us. So far, I'm ready to take some questions later here, but I will cross off this thing here, because in the end, afterwards, I should just have a thank you slide. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the thing here. We have Gerald and Christian coming from the compliance team. They have good messages for you and good information. Listen to them, because keep in mind, this is the cloud service provider control set. If you need to know something about us, I'm a protoplasmatic intelligence system about what we have in the documentation and what we can tell you publicly, and they are the other side. Thank you for your time.